So welcome to today's podcast. Thanks for joining me as always. Super excited to be here today. We're getting closer to the summertime where it's easy to get distracted and sort of want to settle on. People are planning vacations, which I get. And it's always a great time. Weather's nicer and I definitely understand what that's like. But this is a tremendous time to start planning and get ahead of things. So like for next year, I ran across somebody more recently that was really upset. And they just finalized their tax return from last year. And they got wind that they owed well over $60,000 in taxes, not their total tax bill, but what was not withheld. And they had a very successful year last year. And now they owed a ton because they didn't withhold enough and they got hit with some extra penalties associated with it. But the tax bill was just a big surprise. And when asked kind of when did the CPA kind of know about this, your CPA know about it? And they said when they did the tax return. And this really highlights a unique scenario. And I hear this more and more now that when people get some of these surprises or news that they expected their CPA or a tax professional to know about these things, even though there wasn't any conversation around it or discussion. And it just really highlighted the actual scoreboard of your financial life, the tax return. And it wasn't the playbook, though, of planning and getting ahead of it and understanding what was going to happen. It shouldn't be a surprise. And what it highlights, though, is that when a lot of things, and this isn't unique to just taxes, but just generally speaking, a lot of planning, and there's not a lot of planning that goes on, then people will get hit with surprises and may have to react, unfortunately, or suffer, in this case, the consequences is there's not as much you can do. And so today, I want to cover a little bit more about this because this is an opportune time at the middle of the year to start assessing where you are in 2026 and start thinking about maybe the future of planning so that the scoreboard, when you're doing this next year, will look extremely different, and getting your tax professional and CPA or enrolled agent on board to help plan for these things. So let's step back for a second. The tax profession is evolving, just like the financial services industry. And for tax professionals, a lot of it's centered around compliance, and compliance is essential, right? You have to be compliant. We're required to file taxes and do it compliantly. But compliance is asked one question: what happened? What happened in the rear view, and to report it properly? Again, absolutely key. We want to stay legal and do what we're required to do. Strategy, on the other hand, is very different. It's asking a very different question. It's asking, what should we do before the year is up that would impact things in the future? And completely different. And so best line I ever heard about, there was this: compliance records history, strategy designs the future. And this is all about the design, right? And architecting what your financial scoreboard will look like in the future year. So when we think about tax savings, everyone wants to, you can rely on things like, I contribute to my qualified plan of work, which is a typical thing that we're taught. Everyone's taught that's what you should do. There's potentially free money in there. So I get that component, but that's likely the extent of a lot of people's tax saving sort of strategy. And that's more of a deferral than anything, because we don't know what the future tax rates will be. Hopefully they're not higher. But if you are successful, you may experience higher tax rates when you start using your money, but that's the extent of it. And tax savings really is much broader than that. And it starts well before the actual tax season. Usually tax season, most people think about it, you get your communication from your CPA maybe February or something, January, February of the following year. Say we're 2027, talking about 2026. And you got to get all your documents together. We got to file, and that's tax season. Well, unfortunately, the vast majority of options have now since passed, right? Because if you hadn't planned for it. And so tax planning to help you reduce your tax bill legally obviously happens well before that date. And that could be as basic things which happened in this situation that I talked about earlier. They didn't withhold enough, and weren't tracking it, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle, and it was a big shock to them as they experienced it. And they unfortunately were angry at their CPA, which I understand. But, through the course of it, I recognize maybe there was definitely a balance of responsibility for that. And that's where it highlights how do we plan and get ahead of these sorts of things. Obviously throughout the course of the year, a lot of things can happen. New jobs, windfalls from your equity positions at work or your portfolios. Like there's other things that happen, like buying real estate, hiring kids, giving to charity. All these sorts of things happen throughout the year. Business sale, right? And so, or sale of a real estate property, like your primary residence. All these things require some planning ahead of time to see what are the potential tax implications of this, and what are some options to legally address them if there are options. And that is a different sort of animal than most people are used to, because they just kind of report it after the fact. So really, it's key to think about, like, what are those conversations that need to happen 6, 8, 10 months ahead of time so that you can adequately prepare. You really can't deduct yesterday's missed opportunities, right? It's just, you can't always recreate time and go back in time. So really, this is really about eliminating surprises. And unfortunately, it requires some planning. And thankfully, for a lot of tax professionals, after the tax season, they have a little more time, right? Because they finished the big wave. Maybe they have people on extension. And so there's still some catch-up work. That it's not like they're not busy, but certainly they have more window to start thinking about that and planning for these things. And so the modern CPA, and again, maybe if you're a CPA listening to this or a tax professional enrolled agent, the modern CPA is starting to ask different questions. They're asking, what's changing this year? Or what are you trying to build? Or what big decisions are coming down the road? More strategic questions, other than securing, hey, can you share me your documents, right? That's not what is now the evolving CPA or a tax professional enrolled agent is asking, because they know that they're looking to add more value to their clients' lives for strategy, not just a rear view mirror. And that's where the true value is starting to evolve towards. And this is really, as this relates to just another professional, if anyone gets to know me, I love analogies, just helps me understand and sort of reflect on how these things work. Because there's a lot of parallels across this, like an architect, right? And you're designing something, and there's a lot of different parts to it, right? There's a lot of, the plumber or the carpenter, and, there's different components of designing something that all needs to fit together. And it happens in the financial world, where there's very siloed natures of things, whether it's, the CPA, the attorneys that you may have business, or, estate planning attorneys, investment advisors, insurance, lenders, whatever. There's just a mishmash of different types of people, but rarely are they coordinating efforts together on behalf of a client. And it takes someone to help coordinate them all together so that, you have a more cohesive plan of what you're going to do, and designing your financial roadmap and plan so they're syncing up together and actually working together more sort of efficiently, which I see in a lot of scenarios, a lot of disparate parts that are not really connected that well. And so you might have a lot of good pieces working in different areas, but they're maybe not in sync, and no one's really seeing the fuller picture, and it's hard to manage. Obviously, for most people that have got busy lives, busy businesses, it's hard for them to be able to sort of do that coordination and manage it and try to get ahead of these things. And that's what really being a wealth architect really is about, is to help people develop that plan, strategy, and cohesiveness across them. And this goes well into what we're talking about around taxes, right? You need that team of people to help think through it together, whether it's your tax professional, your financial advisor, maybe attorney in some cases, and then you have tax specialists and other people that likely would need to get involved. But you need a team effort to help you really think through it and sort of explore this, so you can change the scoreboard at the end when your CPA enrolled agent gets the file. It won't be a surprise, because you've already done the whole hard work to kind of get there and plan for it properly and spend the time well before it's really needed. So in closing, these are just highlighting kind of what I see is kind of the bigger problem that's happening across, and it results in people getting surprised or missing opportunities. And I don't want that for anybody. I want you to be able to experience those things. And so you kind of ask yourself some of those other big questions that the evolving CPA is asking, like, what are you building towards? Like, what decisions are coming that are really relevant or potentially impactful, right? Are your advisors in your world actually talking to one another and working together on your behalf? Is there anyone helping you coordinate the bigger picture around what's happening in your financial life? And how, more importantly, the financial plan decisions you're making are supporting the life you're building today and the future, right? And helping you connect those dots so you can be confident that you're going down the right road, you're doing the things for a purpose, right? It isn't just accumulating wealth, right? The goal isn't, and as it relates to taxes, the goal isn't a better tax return, right? Really, it's a better financial life, a better amount of control of what's happening. And taxes aren't just something to prepare, they're something to design, just like your broader financial life. And if you think of it from that lens, sometimes it does take a village and a team to do it, to help you think through those things and prepare so that you can control as much as you can on the outcomes. And the last thing I'll leave is compliance is important. Please don't get me wrong. And your tax professional is great. And I've come across tons of tremendous tax professionals who are now evolving into that world of trying to say, what can I do more for my clients? Because compliance records history, strategy designs the future, and you need a team to help you do that and be around the right types of advisors, tax advisors, investment folks who are thinking that way so they can work on your behalf to help you think through things and ensure that your plan is designed in a way that serves you and that you have fewer surprises down the road that are going to get you upset, because nobody likes that for any situation. So I hope this was helpful to kind of get a lens and help you think through these things in future episodes. What we're going to do is really dive deeper into what tax strategy even looks like, right? Whether you're a W-2 earner or having a job and your income's growing and complexity in life is growing, or a business owner where there's a lot of other moving parts. You're trying to juggle your business and the business growth, maybe exiting, on top of your personal financial life that you're trying to support as well, your tax sort of situation. It's getting much more complicated, and there's a lot of overlaps in coordination that are required. And we'll go through other things related to investments, your retirement, estate planning, and how your CPA and advisors really can work together on your behalf. So hopefully you'll join me for those conversations, and hopefully give you some insight to certain areas and how to think about it, and hopefully encourage you to start planning and taking the actions ahead of time before they're needed and designing your financial life so it can help you design your life broadly. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride Podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.